Let me take off from the point of Yemen. I think we're all concerned about the humanitarian crisis there and recognize, I think we're upwards of $230 million or so that we've provided so far in that. What's the number?
In Yemen, it's 721 million.
Oh, wow. Okay, perfect. So my question to you is the following. It's still an active conflict zone. Theoretically, just as an example, if the Houthis, I would suspect, or I would know, at the direction, let's say, of the IRGC and the Quds Force and Soleimani, were to conduct attacks, say, in Saudi Arabia, against Saudi Arabia, as they've done in the past, or against U.S. interests in the region, for example, the U.S. Navy or even commercial shipping vessels, that would elicit necessarily a military response. If you could describe, I think we could all sort of sense what that would do for the humanitarian efforts that are going on there. But any sort of active attack by the Houthis, especially at the direction of Iran, against either Saudi interests, which would elicit a Saudi response, and God forbid against U.S. interests, which would elicit a devastating response, would dramatically exacerbate and I would imagine significantly impede, if not stop, efforts to provide aid to the people who so desperately need it.
Mr. Chairman, I guess a couple of points. Obviously, as to the diplomatic and security situation, I would defer to the State Department. They're the ones who can give you the best characterization of where they see the posture of that situation. However, on the humanitarian front, we all recognize that even at best, what we are trying to do is treatment, not cure. That a long-term political settlement, a cessation of hostilities, is crucial to being able to get in to provide life-saving medicine, to provide life-saving food assistance, and some have characterized very effectively how dire the need is. But in the long run, it's getting in to restore some reemergence of the social compact between citizens and leaders of ministries and local institutions that will provide some kind of stability and predictability. So humanitarian assistance, we're the humanitarian assistance agency, but we recognize that diplomacy and development and obviously security in a secure setting are the only way that we can produce long-term results.
I guess the point I was trying to drive at is if the Houthis truly care about humanitarian assistance reaching the people who desperately need it, attacking the United States on the orders of Iran or allowing the IRGC to operate from space they control is not the best idea, if in fact they care about humanitarian assistance.
We need a cessation of hostilities, including missile and UAV strikes from Houthi-controlled areas. I mean, we just have to have that. And then subsequently, the coalition airstrikes must obviously cease in all populated areas. Those are the two steps that we need to be able to effectively deliver humanitarian relief.
And an escalation of the conflict by the Houthis by targeting targets inside Saudi Arabia or targeting the United States would run counter to a cessation of hostilities.
An escalation of hostilities is a very bad thing for innocent people on the ground who are trying to desperately get those medicines.
Pivoting to Venezuela, I know you've spoken about it in your opening statement. I think it's my understanding, and perhaps the numbers have been updated, that last year Colombia spent over $1 billion dealing with well over 1 million migrants. If you could, they are our strongest counter-drug partner in the region, one of our strongest allies in the region. How would you describe, whether in numbers or in just general terms, the impact that the instability in Venezuela is having on Colombia, both from a cost and societal perspective?
Sadly, it's one of the most undercovered and underappreciated aspects to this conflict. I've seen reports suggesting that Colombia's economic growth, while still positive, has been reduced by 0.8%, just as on the basis of the burden of the uncontrolled migrant flow. But I'm heading back down to the region in a couple of days' time. There's so many things that we're working with President Duque on that we're going to raise the profile of, but this is a dark cloud that certainly threatens their future. as we talk about humanitarian crises, we have the obvious ones that we all recognize, and then we have the narcos running around the place. So we have, on top of everything else, this extraordinarily unstable situation in which the Venezuelans are providing safe harbor to bad guys who impact the ability of Colombia to take on some of their longstanding governance challenges for peace and reconciliation. So it is a terrible threat to Colombia. I'm very impressed with President Duque. I'm impressed with his plans. I'm impressed with what they're trying to do and their generosity and hospitality towards Venezuelans, but they need our help desperately.
Yeah, one of the things I'm growing increasingly concerned about is a number of Venezuelan military and National Guard defectors that are currently located inside of Colombia, and the Colombians have shouldered the cost of housing and providing for them. But their situation, we get mixed reports that they were evicted from the hotel, that these folks stepped forward and did the right thing in supporting the Constitution. What are the plans or what are discussions are occurring in terms of dealing with that group particular of the military defectors that now find themselves inside of, I say defectors, the military officials that have joined, rank and file soldiers that, and guardsmen and police officers that have joined the legitimate government. Who is taking care of them? What plans are in the works to address providing for them a way forward?
Senator, in terms of formal plans, they've not been completed or finalized yet, so I don't have much to tell you on that front. What I can tell you, what I can say, is that we're in touch with Guaido's people all the time, continuously, and it is something they're very much aware of, as are the Colombians with whom we speak continuously. So we're working to forge plans driven by them that deal with this challenge and others. These are obviously changing numbers all the time, but it represents another uncertainty that impacts the situation.
Yeah, I would just say that the United States, as my view, has an obligation to contribute to that effort, and I hope we can work with you and with the administration to make it happen. Multiple administration officials, members of Congress, myself included, actively called for these individuals to do what they did, which is not to kill innocent civilians and to come forward. They did so at great personal risk, in many cases a great personal price for their families that were left inside of Venezuela. And I just personally believe that we do have a moral obligation to contribute to not just money, but some plan for them to have a way forward and not just simply to be stuck there on the Colombian side with no sort of future prospects.